Beautiful people under the stratosphere, you are here for emotional crisis control number 3. And I just wanted to remind you, the reason you're here, this is a series of 7, is to reset your vibration and your frequency to a point where you can accurately make the right decisions and choices that will benefit you after you go through the crisis. So today, number 3 is use your words. So we went from number 1, where we had an intensity activity to bring the body, draw the mind into the body. You can go even more intense than what was offered in that video. Number 2 is keep moving. So you keep at a 50% level, you keep going, because the body still needs to filter out that energy that was generated during your emotional crisis. After that, now you might be ready where you feel like, I'm going to put some words together and I want to hear what my mind comes up with. What's it going to say? And obviously the best way to process this is talking to someone else that we trust, that we feel, how would I tell this to this trusted person, to this trusted friend? So we're going to have 4 do's and 4 don'ts. The do's are obviously making the words, finding the right person. I cannot stress how important it is for you to find the right person to talk to after an emotional crisis. Sometimes the wrong person will just throw you back into, go back to number 1, right? If that happens, go back to number 1 and do your intensity movement and training, get the core all pumped up, start the cycle again. If you chose the wrong person, all good, right? And so finding, it was just memories of choosing the wrong person. So finding the right person sometimes is not actually the closest trusted friend you have, because they have an emotional attachment to you as well, and they might be biased and have some fiery reactions in your defense. So all good, it's because they love you, but in the moment, it might not be exactly the support that you're looking for. So I have found that a friendship somewhere in the middle, also someone that is not really related to me in a sense of, I'm not going to run into them at work. I'm not going to see them where I have to confront the situation, or they might bring it up in an awkward moment. That might be a little bit trickier to find, but trust the right decision will be made when the time comes. And also, if it's faux pas and you're 5 minutes in the conversation and you're like, wasn't the right one, just say, you can take the conversation another direction, or just say, this isn't what I was originally planning the conversation to go. So sense that out where it is. Number 2, find a safe place. So after you go through the whole thing of filtering who's the right person, think of, where is the right place for this? If you're going to meet them personally, I always say best is on your territory or neutral territory. Can be fine also if you know the person well and you feel comfortable in their territory. But I have found that one expresses themselves a little bit more truthfully and honestly if you're comfortable in your surroundings. And obviously somewhere where you don't feel there's children or the spouse is going to overhear. May the space be just for you two during the moment. Oh, and crowded places, like, let's meet at the coffee shop and I'm going to share with you my intimate emotional crisis that I just had. This is a definite no. Or at a bar, right? I've done both of those scenarios. I'm like, people interrupting. No. So the safe space is key. Next one is time. Have enough time. Nothing like you're just getting into it and they're like, hey, I'd love to continue listening to your story. I really care about you, but I gotta go, right? Or yourself. Don't squeeze it in between two things you have going on because you might cut yourself short. I say plan 3 hours. It takes about 30 minutes to 40 minutes to get through the weather talk. Not that you're not talking about the situation, but it takes a moment for the vulnerability to kind of kick in. It doesn't happen as quickly, especially if you just happen to have the crisis, right? So it might take you some time to conjure up the courage to really get to the part that you actually wanted to share. This also happens in therapy most of the time. So I would try to do the pre-talking before I'd go to therapy so that when I'd come in, I like talk with myself, and then I'd come in and I'd jump right in where I had left off. And I'm like, so this is what I actually want to work on. And that would save time. She didn't really need to know all the other stuff going on. So yes, finding enough time, setting the time with them. And number 2, this one a lot of people normally don't think about, and it is planning your activity post the interaction. So you meet the right person, the space is safe, you have enough time, you feel it went full circle. Goodbye, goodbye. Now what? Now what? Sometimes it'll throw you back to the beginning of the crisis because you didn't plan. I say go with number 2. Number 2 is keep moving for 60 minutes. So after you end that and round that up, go back for your walk or your activity of washing dishes, or you're going to do dancing, whatever you're going to do it for another 60 minutes so you can process it in your body, hearing yourself tell this story, share this experience. You can do a lot of evaluation in this time, even to the point where I had no idea that I felt about it this way. Or you could also think about, I had no idea the impact that what it would sound like when I told someone else, and consider, is that a truth that I'm also not aware of, that I was denying myself? Because having it in your body, the emotional crisis, is one thing, but putting it to the words, to the actual feelings and pinpointing them, rather than I'm in pain and I feel hurt, specifically, finding the specific words to explain a situation where you're pinpointing. There's a lot of nonviolent communication work where the education for your emotional system is, when you find the exact word, you can free and liberate what it's holding on to. But since it can't put a name to it, it holds on to the vibration or the frequency. If you can put a name to it in a word, part of it has released, right? So those are my 4 do's. The trusted person, the safe space, have enough time, and plan your after activity. Now we'll move into the 4 don'ts. Don't ask for advice. That's my advice. I've noticed that when I jump into the conversation with this new person, I say, wow, I'm so confused, I'm overwhelmed, this really struck me, it was unexpected, I had to do all this recovery energy, I missed work, whatever, The first outreach is normally, what do I do? What do you think? What would you do if you were in my shoes, right? Not that we don't want their advice, actually, but when you cue them that you want their advice, the whole time you're sharing your process, they're thinking, what should I say? What should I say in response? They might even cut you off before you get to the point of the base, or the thorn, the actual thorn of the pain, because they're already listening to respond, especially if you cue them that you're here for their advice. Rather, even if you would like their advice, I would say, I really need you to hear me out and listen to, I just want to get this off my chest. I need to vent. I need to let it all go. There you can also measure their physical reaction to what happened to you. That can be feedback enough. And if you feel mentally ready and you think you are ready to hear someone's thoughts about your situation, you could add on at the end of all of that and say, what do you think? Or what do you hear from what I've shared with you? Do you have a perspective? Or have you ever felt something similar to this? Did you understand what I went through? So you're asking them for an analysis of your explanation without saying, well, what should I do? Right? The most common, at least in Latin America, they're like, it's a radical, you don't need this, you don't deserve it, just forget it, you're so much better than this. It's like an immediate, we're gonna just pump you up, let's go out tonight. I'm like, no, that's not what I was looking for, right? So yes, consider what they, because then you have to deal with whatever they say. We don't want to add to the emotional crisis, right? So there you can measure exactly what you want to say at the closure after you've asked them to hear you out. Number 2, try not to relive the experience. We've already decided that we're finding the key person that is not so attached to you that they will want to go out and either manage the situation for you or face up with someone because of something someone did to you. So hopefully it's not this person, because if you relive the experience in front of them, you are generating the whole frequency of themselves has been altered. No, they're gonna vibe off that vibe. They're gonna start to live your crisis with you. So unless you're ready for the verbal interaction where you feel like if you start to talk about it and you yourself feel like I'm not going to be able to hold it, there's no shame in backtracking and saying I thought I was ready and I was interested in sharing this, but apparently I'm not. Because if you aren't able to give a flat delivery, then this is confusing for the person who's just trying to listen to. Now, there's nothing wrong with being emotional, and maybe you might cry when you share whatever, but another thing is when you realize you're starting to relive it physically. Physically, you're feeling that your body is starting to change back to the moment. Then go back to number 1, go back to crisis control number 2, wait a few days, and then try with the same person or with another person if you can verbalize. Number 3, whatever they say, if you go for that final what do you think moment, sleep on it one day. I love that. That's a little rhyme. Whatever they say, sleep on it one day before taking action with any advice or words that they had to say. Consider what they say as something entirely optional. It's not even necessary for them to add, but sometimes it can really help. I have had people say things to me that have comforted me in therapy, for example. Now, you are actually paying this person for their afterthoughts of the situation. So in this case, you are kind of relying on like, and so now greater mind that's outside of the situation. So what do you think, right? Even with that information, I would not make any decisions or any choices that day. Don't leave the chat and take off and be like, now I'm gonna go do. That's why you prepare for yourself a whole 60-minute walk, swimming session, tennis match, something physical, because the frequency of the body can always filter things out for you. It's like a sieve. And then out of there, will come out. It'll filter out the stuff where you realize that was not in line with me. That was not in my frequency, which sometimes if you don't take physical action, you can't tell the difference. And some people will promote you to go take care of this right away so you can be out of this state. But the state is energetic and it has a process to unwind. Choosing or deciding some life-changing decision will not always get rid of the state. It might bring you some relief in that moment that you took a direction, but you still have to deal with the moment of crisis that you had. And number 4, end the sharing if you feel unsafe. This I've had to do 1 or 2 times. It wasn't necessarily because I chose the wrong person. It might be when you're listening to what they're saying, or something in the atmosphere has changed, or a person unexpectedly came home. If you feel unsafe at any moment while you're sharing your personal emotional crisis experience, that is not going to go well, and you will not have any benefits. Just take a moment, pause, and say, I think I need to continue this some other time. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you calling the pause. Sometimes we feel like I committed to seeing this person and they have made available to me their time. So I want to pull through with what I started discussing, what I wanted to say. But there's no law for that. So any moment when you're halfway through, you can disengage. Also, I recommend, this is not on the list, but I remember in high school that I would jump shot in the same day 2 or 3 people and explain my crisis situation to each one. It's like I got a dopamine hit off of sharing it. And I couldn't process, at the end, I couldn't even remember who I had said what to. And to every person, it's so interesting. You give a slightly different version because you accommodate to the actual relationship with that person. So it's great to get the different versions. I'd say just don't do it on the same day. So you can solidify the feedback of one day, go to bed, rest, sleep with that. And maybe that's all you needed. But since you were on the roll of I'm going to share, I'm going to get it out there. I want to know what people think so I can make a decision about it. Sometimes there's no decision. It's just the crisis is done and past, and now we're just draining the energy. And it helps for recognition and validation for someone we know to be a witness to something hard that we lived, and we were resilient enough to come out standing on the other side. This is very comforting and very helpful on a cellular level, that you were able to trust someone enough to share something that has impacted your life or impacted it a day or 2 ago. So yes, tomorrow will be go manual. So first we went verbal, and then we will find in the next video the strength and the power of taking our emotional crisis into the strength and power of our hands, and what they can do manually to dissolve basically any structure that is left from your emotional crisis. All the best to you every day. May you wake up stronger, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.